So let's jump to our player view controller and start putting this together. So what we're going to do first is we are going to implement the AV audio player, which is found in AV Foundation, to play audio. And I've got a completely separate video on how to play basic audio, so I encourage you to take a look at that. But let's do this first, and then we'll set up controls to control the audio. So we need a player, which is an AV audio player. And in this function to configure, we're going to basically say a couple things. First, we need to get the position get the song at the position that was passed into this controller. So the song is going to be the song at that position. And we are going to then say, let URL to this song asset is going to be bundle.main path for resource, and the resource name is basically going to be song dot, I think I called it track name, and they're all MP3s, so of type MP3. Then we need to do a do catch statement to actually configure our player. And basically, do catch is going to try to configure the player with the given URL, which may or may not be nil. We'll actually call it a URL string. And if it fails, we're going to print out an error. So error occurred. In here, we first need to set up the AV audio session, which is a global thing across all playback. And the app needs to know what type of mode you are working with. So we're going to set default, and we also need to set, and actually we need to try before this, we also need to set active, I believe it's called, with some options, and the option is notify others on deactivation. Next, we can make sure that we actually got a URL string, because this can return optional if a resource at the given name and file type don't exist. And if it's not nil, we can now configure the player. So we can say player equals try AV audio player with contents of a URL. And it's going to be a URL with a string of URL string. And lastly, we want to unwrap this player. So we're going to say guard let player equals player. Make sure it's not nil anymore, and we can start the playback. So let's say command B. Looks like we could have an error somewhere. So we're saying player equals, try to create an AV audio player, URL string. We need an exclamation mark there because a URL instantiator, the constructor, is optional. So now if you hit command B, we basically should be building. And before we test it, let's add one more function, which is going to be will disappear. View will disappear. We want to call super view will disappear. And we're basically going to say if the player isn't nil, let's stop the playback before dismissing this controller. So if the person tries to swipe the controller away, we're going to say player.stop. So let's hit Command R and let's make sure that we can actually play the audio that we want. So let's hit this first one. And let's see, we messed up something because I don't hear any audio. Let's try this one. Still no audio. Let's see, our volume is up. And we still have no audio. So what is going on here? So let's see. The track name actually refers to the root level of our project. So let's try moving these song files to the top. Not sure if that'll make a difference, but that's the first thing that comes to mind. So let's try that one more time. And we still don't have audio. Interesting. Let's see. I bet that the actual error is coming up in here, but let's put in some print statements to validate that assumption. And I love to put these error kind of debugging moments into my videos because it shows a practical workflow of fixing issues along the way. So when we hit this, we don't actually even come into this function, it looks like. We're saying player subviews count equals 0 because holder subview count equals 0. Once this controller loads, holder will be empty. So if the count is 0, then we want to configure. So we weren't actually even coming into this function. So now, assuming that was the only error, we should hear playback, like so. Cool. So let's dismiss this, try this one. Get music. I don't want to play it too long to get a copyright strike on this video. Let's try this third one. Awesome. So we get our audio playing, things are working every time, we can dismiss it, the audio stops. Now we want to set up the album cover, the play, forward, backward buttons, a volume slider, and some labels for the song name, album name, and artist name. So it's quite a few things. Let's do them one by one. So the first thing we want to do is the album cover, and we're going to actually create a global image view property because we're going to want to do some things with this album cover image view and other functions, and we're going to need access to it. So let's come up here and just do user interface elements. And the first thing that we want is a private let album image view is a UI image view. And we're going to use this anonymous closure is what this pattern is called to create it. So we're going to say let image view equals a UI image view dot content mode scale aspect fill, and we can return this image view. And now what we can do in our configure function is we can say that the frame of this equals as follows within x, y, width, and height. We're going to do 10, 10, holder.frame.size .width minus 20, and same for the height, which will give us a square. And we're going to say the actual image of this is going to be a UI image with a name, and the name is going to be song.image name. And of course we want to add this to the holder so we can see it on our screen. So add subview for the image view. The other things that we need that are dynamic and otherwise need to be global are the labels, because we need to be updating those labels in other functions. So there's going to be 3 labels. There's going to be a song name label. Let's update these real fast. This is going to be a UI label. And we're going to say the text alignment will be centered, and the label.number of lines will be 0. This allows it to line wrap if the label flows onto multiple lines instead of giving you like the ... which truncates the label. We need 2 more of these, one for the artist and one for the album. So we're going to have an artist name label and a album name label like so. And let's see, our buttons and slider for the volume do not need to be public because we're not going to ever be updating them. We're just going to be creating them once. So let's configure our labels, and then we'll do the player controls. So we need to set a frame for these labels, their text, and then add them to our holder. Let's add them actually first. So we're going to say holder, add subview, our song label, and we're going to have an album label and an artist label. Let's set up their frames. I'm going to be lazy and copy and paste this. So the first label, rather the order of the labels is going to be song, name, and then album, and then artist. And this order is vertical, so top down. So the first one is going to be the frame of this. The next one is going to be the frame of the, what did I say, album. So we want this one. And we're going to adjust the X, Y, width, and height, of course, in just a second. And last one is going to be the artist. So the X we can actually keep, and the width we can keep for all of these, because it'll be basically the width of the screen with a 10-point buffer on each side, but our text is going to be centered, so they'll look appropriate. The thing we want to change is the height. We'll make the height for each of these 70. Oops, let's get rid of my antivirus pop-up. Sorry about that. So the height will be 70 for each of these labels. So it'll be a static size. And the Y will need to change. So the first Y is going to be the height of the album image plus 10. So the frame size height plus 10. And the next one is going to be the same plus an additional 70 because the label before it was 70. And this next one, let's align these properly, is going to be adding another 70. So we could just add 140 because of the additional label before it. Now these calculations can be cleaned up. I'm just going to shorthand it like this because I believe they're correct if I'm not mistaken, but I would take the time to just clean up the math around this. So let's set the text for each of these before we run the app and see our label. So the song name label.text equals song.name. The album label.text equals song.album name. The artist label.text is song.artist name. Hit Command R to build and run. And hopefully my math is not wrong. And we see our labels here. Now it looks like the 70 might have been kind of big, but let's keep it as is for now because it looks like we have enough room to create our controls. You can always bump the font size and adjust the frame as you see fit. So now we want to add a play pause button and a backward, forward, and slider. So the slider, let's do that first. So the slider is going to be a slider, UI slider, with a frame, of course, like every other element. It's going to have a CG rect with an X of 20. Y is going to be the height of the holder minus 60. And I'll show you where I got 60 from in a second. And the width is going to be the holder frame size width minus 40. Because our X is 20, we want 20 on each side. And the height's going to be 50. So the 60 I got is because we want a buffer between the bottom of the holder and the slider of 10 pixels. 60 minus 50, you get 10. So now we want to add this to our holder as a subview. And we also want to basically set the value of it. And the value is going to be 0.5. And the slider goes by default from 0 to 1, I believe, from 0.0 to 1.0. And as we move this slider, we also want to get the value out of it. So we're going to add a target to the slider. So we're going to say slider, add target, self. And before we do the action, let's create a function down here, which is prefixed at objc func did slide slider. And it'll take a parameter of the slider itself. And in here, we can get the value out of the slider by saying slider.value and adjust player volume. And we'll do that in a second. But now we can say the action of this is slider did slide slider. And this is for value changed on the slider itself. And to change the player audio volume, we can simply say player.volume equals value. And if I'm not mistaken, the volume is also a value between 0.0 and 1.0. So let's hit Command B, make sure we don't have any errors. And let's actually set one more thing before we run to make sure the volume stuff works, is when we create this player, let's set its volume to be 0.5 to start off with, so it matches our slider. So the volume will be 50%. So let's hit Command R to build and run. Open this up. And let's see, we have a slider. And you can see, as we move it, the volume goes from 0 to all the way up. And if we slide it down, you can see the audio has gone away. So, okay, let's do the player controls and wrap up this video. So we've got the slider looking pretty good. The next thing we want are 3 buttons. We want a play button, play pause button, which will be a UI button. We want a next button, which is a UI button as well, and a back button. Now, each of these buttons are going to have images from the system default images. So for the play pause button, the image that it's going to have by default is the pause button, since we play as soon as the controller appears. So we're going to instantiate this with an image, a background image. Rather, we'll just assign it down here. So let's do the images. We're going to say play pause button, set background image. It's going to be a UI image with a system name. And I believe it's called pause.fill. And it'll be for the normal state. Let's copy and paste this twice for the other buttons. The next one we want is back button and next button. And let's see, back button is going to be, I think it's called back.fill and forward.fill for the next button. Let's add these to our holder. So we want play pause, next button, and back button. We also want to set the tint color of the button to be black. So let's do that for each of the buttons. Like so. We, of course, need to set the frame. And let's actually change this to styling, because that's essentially what we're doing. We'll do the frames here for the buttons. And then we need to add actions to each of the buttons. So for each of the buttons, we need to call a function. So let's create 3 functions here. And they're all going to be prefixed at objc so we can call them. So did tap back button. Do that twice. And we're going to say did tap next button, did tap play pause button. And we'll implement those in just a second. Let's attach those actions to each button. So play pause button, add target, self, selector is did tap play pause button. For touch up inside, let's copy and paste this line twice for the other 2 buttons. This one's going to be did tap next button, did tap back button, and don't forget to change your actual buttons like so. And let's set the frame. So I did this last because I'm going to have to think about the calculation a little bit. But let's see what we could do. So we want the buttons to be right below the last label, which is this artist label. So, and we want all the buttons to be like vertically in the same row, like going across, or horizontally rather. So they're all going to have the same Y coordinate. So let's say let Y position equals this label frame origin y plus 70, which is the label's height, plus let's do 20. So that's going to be the y. The height and width of the button should be a square, and we're going to pick an arbitrary number. We'll say size, which is a CG float, will be, I don't know, 80. And let's set up the buttons now. So the play button is going to, of course, have a frame. Its X is going to be 0. We're going to update this in a second. The Y is going to be this Y position. Width is size, and height is size. So of course the play pause button should be centered. So we can say, actually let's just do it up here. It makes it cleaner than adding more code. The width, we want that centered. So we're gonna say the X is holder.frame.size.width minus the size of this button divided by 2. And I apologize for these like quick off the top of my head calculations, so feel free to pause the video and kind of think about the math if you're having a little trouble following the framing. Let's copy and paste this twice for the next and back button. So next button and back button. The Y, height, and width will stay the same. The thing that needs to change is the X, so horizontal axis. The next button should be on the right of the play button. So we're simply going to say it's the width of the entire holder minus 100. So 80 for the actual size. Rather, let's do this. Minus size. So this is actually supposed to be X, like that. So holder's width minus the size of the button, minus a 20 pixel buffer. And for the back button, we want this to be simply 20 because this will be 20 from the left of the screen. And pro tip, if you want to fix the indentation like my OCD makes me, you can highlight this and hit Control I, and it'll indent everything for you for your code, so you don't have to go through each line manually and set it up. But hit Command B. Hopefully I didn't mess up the calculations. Hit Command R to build and run, and let's see if we get our buttons. So we got our buttons, but they're obnoxiously big, and we need to fix the framing. So size is currently 80. Y position looks to be correct. The width minus size divided by 2 looks to be correct as well. Next button and back button. Let's comment these out and let's do these one by one, so we make sure we don't break anything along the way. So our play button is not in fact centered. So we want the center of this to be the holder's width minus size divided by, I see, because this is supposed to be 2.0 and clearly I can't type today. So let's uncomment these again, and hopefully all my numbers are correct this time. Okay, so this looks good, this looks good. We're gonna decrease the size in a sec, but where is our back button? Let's see if our button's there, but maybe my image name is wrong. Sometimes that happens and the frame is correct, but your image is actually not correct. Yeah, so our button is there, but our image name is wrong. So for the back button, I called it back.fill. It might have been backward.fill. Let's try that one more time. Beautiful. So now we have all three of our buttons. Let's stop this music. Let's get rid of this red background, and let's also decrease the size of the button because they're kind of large. And let's actually implement tapping a button and doing something. So let's see. We want the play pause button to simply play and pause. So we're going to say if player is playing, we want to basically pause. Otherwise, we want to play. So we can say player.pause and player.play. Now I just thought of something else we need to do, and that is update the image of the, this is supposed to be equals true because this is optional, but we want to basically update the image of the play pause button. So let's make this play pause button a global. So let's take this guy and move it out of our function and put it up here with the other global properties. Hit Command B. Make sure you're still building. Let's come back to our play pause action. And if you hit the button to pause the music, we want to show play button because right now the music is no longer playing, and vice versa. So I'm going to be lazy again and copy and paste what we have up here. So if the music is not playing anymore, we want to show the play button, which I believe is play.fill. Otherwise, show the pause button. Let's hit Command R to build and run. And let's see if this works. So hit this button and we get the music stopped. And we can play and pause. And it actually picks up exactly where we left off the music because it's pausing and not stopping. Key difference there. The next thing we want to do is be able to skip the track and go to the previous track as well. So let's implement these functions. So we're essentially going to say, in did tap back button, if the position is greater than 0, in other words, you're not already at the first song, we can go back. So this is super important to check. But what we're going to now say is position equals position minus 1. The songs are not going to change, but we are going to say player dot stop holder remove all subviews. Rather, what we can do, because that actually is deprecated, I just remembered, we can say for subview in holder, subview remove from, subview in holder dot subviews, subview remove from superview. That's what we want. A little bit of a tongue twister there. So we're going to basically stop the player. We're going to get rid of all of the subviews in holder. We've updated the position. And after this, we're just going to call configure again. And this should basically be able to reconfigure everything and start playback of the next song. Similarly, we'll copy and paste this to did tap next button. The only thing that's going to change in here is we're going to add 1 to position. And we're going to make sure position is less than the songs.count minus 1. And we're doing minus 1 because, of course, the array is enumerated 0 upward. So 0 songs.count actually would be 1 over the top of the array. And if I'm not mistaken, that should be it to get that working. So let's play a song. If we hit back, nothing should happen. If we hit next, next song, so on and so forth. So the reason I actually started again is if you remember, we just copied and pasted the song models, so they're just duplicating over and over. Start with another song, and let's go to the next one. And of course, we can play pause. And yeah, let's actually do one more thing before concluding this video. If you notice on like the native music app, when you pause the music, the album cover shrinks a little bit. Let's actually implement that because I think it looks kind of nice and it's a little cool. So the way we're going to do that is pretty simple actually. We can simply take the frame assignment of the image view for the album cover, and we're just going to animate this to be a little smaller. So in the play pause button function, what we're going to do is if we've paused the music, we want to shrink image, and if we play the music, basically we want to show, rather increase image size. And we can do that with a very basic animation API that Apple allows us to use, which is UI view, animate with duration, and we're going to make the duration 0.2. And in this animation block, we can simply literally copy and paste that into there. These all need to be prefixed self dot. Hit Command B. Should still be building. And let's take this block and move it up here. And we want to recalculate the sizes to be smaller. So the way we're going to do that is we're simply going to say this is going to be 30, 30, 60, and 60. So it should be smaller. We got 60 by just doubling the 30s for the X and the Y. And let's see what this looks like. So let's pick a song, hit pause, it shrinks, play, zooms in. So I don't know about you guys, but I think the animation adds quite a bit of value. It looks pretty nifty, and it's really not a lot of code, but it really adds another level of being intuitive with the user. So there you have it. That's how you build a very basic music app. If you wanted to add things like playlists and albums, well, the playlist part you basically have down because you can go through these songs already, which is great. Albums, basically you would just sort out these songs into various collections, aka a single album. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I really was excited about this one in particular. If you haven't done so already, smash that like button down below. Helps out the channel, helps me make more videos. And I want to hear from you guys in the comments. Did you have any issues with the video? I know I went through this one pretty fast. I planned on doing this yesterday and actually didn't get a chance to, which is why I wanted to hammer it out today. Do you have any suggestions? I know some of you have been emailing me with like app idea suggestions, which I love to hear. It really gets me kind of in line with you guys to see what you want to see. So yeah, thanks again for watching. I'm going to be uploading this source code onto GitHub for you all to take a look at, and I'll catch you in the next one.